Hey everybody, welcome to That's Football. Two big footballing stories for you this morning, and the first one is an absolute joke. We will be talking about what Chelsea's manager has said about selling Conor Gallagher, which backs up what I said yesterday to all those Chelsea fans who were moaning. Your manager agrees, but let's start off with the big breaking story. Atlético Madrid are going to pay £81.5 million for Alvarez, and you're telling me the Premier League ain't broke? That football ain't broke. It's always bloody Man City. It's an absolute joke. It's just not fair. Like, they are so far ahead anyway, maybe because of the 115. We'll find out about that. Let's not upset them too much, but we sort of need... look, I'm not here saying if you're not guilty, you should get found guilty, but for the good of football, Man City need their wings clipping because they're flying high like a juggernaut. I mean, they're getting £80 million, their backup striker, straight into the football club, huge profit, gets reinvested on better players. You can't compete with that. You cannot compete with that. And whether you think it's fair or not, Man City are selling their bench striker for £80 million that they can reinvest that huge amount of money back into their squad. They've already got the biggest revenue. They can already spend money anyway. And now...
All right, here's what it is. I understand what Goldbridge is saying. I really do. And what I'm going to say is precisely the reason why I have my channel, so I get to say what I want to say. Like, he's saying what he wants to say on his channel. Here's what I'm going to say about this. Imagine if Lance Armstrong, right? Let's say 2 years. Let's say 2 years after he was banned. Now remember, Lance Armstrong didn't admit to his doping. He never did. Years passed before he finally admitted it on Oprah Winfrey's show, right? That was when he, from the horse's mouth, he said, yes, there was doping, right? But the Tour de France organizers, they didn't wait for that confession that came years later to ban Lance Armstrong. The minute they had their evidence, the minute they had their results, they banned him and they stripped him of all the titles that he had won before then. So, what Mark Goldbridge is talking about, I can only equate it to a situation whereby, imagine if, let's say, a year and 6 months after they banned Armstrong, imagine he walks up to the Tour de France organizer's office and he says to them, like, look, I know it's been a year and 6 months since you guys banned me and all of that, but you guys have still not been able to prove that there was any doping on my part. How about I promise you guys, here I am now, that there will no longer be any doping on my part officially up front. How about you guys let me back into the Tour de France? That's how this looks to me. And I'll explain that. Manchester City have been financially doping from the beginning. From the beginning. The records that the hackers exposed regarding this financial doping went all the way back to Roberto Mancini, meaning all the way back to the very first Premier League title that Manchester City ever won. They've been financially doping their club ever since then. So my question to Mark Goldbridge, my question to every pundit in the world that knows about the 115 charges. My question is this: what makes you all think that City ever stopped doping? That's my question. Meaning, what is the evidence that City said, okay, you know what, we were doping before, but now we are big enough, we are healthy enough, so we don't need to dope anymore. We don't need to cook the books anymore. What is the evidence to prove that? City haven't stopped doping. City haven't stopped cooking their books. City are never going to stop cooking their books. That is the simple fact. If the Premier League relegates City or not, if the sanctions are brought to bear or not, it does not change the fact that City will not stop what they are doing. I'll go so far on a limb band to say that if they even tell Atletico, here's the deal, we are going to give you this guy for 70, but you guys say that is 80. What stops such a deal from happening? If it helps Atletico look better, if it helps them look like, oh, we don't have a problem shelling out big funds, what's to stop that? So you see why I bring up the Lance Armstrong analogy. I use the analogy of Lance Armstrong. We already know you've been doing it. So how exactly are we now supposed to come back and say, okay, well, we know you were doing it before, but we know that you're not doing it anymore? No. Was the Premier League letting state-sponsored ownership? They opened a Pandora's box that, number one, I don't even think they know how to close. Number two, which is even worse, I don't even think they want to close it. And number three, even if they did, they don't know how to close it.
Well, they're selling players who are bench players for 80 million. I mean, Arsenal don't even have an Erling Haaland. They don't even have an Alvarez. And Man City are selling Alvarez for 80 million quid. And where Atletico Madrid are getting that money from, I don't know. At the start of the summer, they're pleading poverty because they...
Like I said, if City even say, here, we'll let you guys have this guy for £64 million, but you guys can say it's 81. How do we know what is to stop them from playing like that? They've already been playing shady from the beginning. I have not seen any regulation. I have not seen any statute or law or any incentive to them to have stopped. Put it like this, yeah? It was hackers who exposed City for dealings going back to as far as just a few years ago. If those hackers were to have struck today in 2024, then how do we know that in 2024 the evidence would have extended further into, say, a 2021, say a 2022? It's been called where it's been called because that was where the information leak exposed them up to. If the leak had happened later, doesn't that mean that the leak would simply have picked up more chatter, more documentation, about activities in such a similar progression. Think about it. Why would they have stopped? Why would they have stopped? It was working so well for them. Why would they have stopped? Even after the hacker, why would they stop? They would simply know that, okay, we need to be smarter about this because now we are in an era where people can go into our systems and pull out information we don't want seen. But realistically, other than that, why would City say, you know what, we want to repent and we want to stop financially doping?
They can't afford Mason Greenwood for 25 million. They've just gone and spunked 110 million on Conor Gallagher and Alvarez. And apparently, you know, La Liga's in a footballing crisis. This ain't even bloody Barcelona or Real Madrid. So where they're getting that money from, God only knows. But it's always Man City, isn't it? And look, I jest a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to Atletico Madrid what they want to pay, and fair play to Man City for getting that amount of money. Is Alvarez worth £80 million? No, not really. I don't think so. People can say he's a World Cup winner. So was Alan Ball. He wasn't better.
Alvarez is no more than, with all that is behind him, Champions League, World Cup, everything, all the trophies, Copa America, with all the trophies behind Alvarez, it doesn't make Alvarez any more than a 60 million player. With everything he's got going on for him right now, with all that hype, it still should not make Alvarez anything more than a 60 million player. That's fact, because everything he's been doing, it's been from the bench. Let's see, when you go week in, week out, if it's when he does that now, if he does that at Atletico, and I think he will, I think he'll thrive in a league that's as technical as La Liga, because don't question one thing, Julian Alvarez is a very, very good technical player, yeah? So La Liga is going to fit him quite well. But I'm just saying that he's no more than 60 million, and it would be a successful couple of seasons at Atletico now that would push him into that 80 million category that they've paid for him now. The good news for them, though, is that if he does perform at that level that I expect, then in another 2-3 seasons at the most, they'll be talking about coming to buy Alvarez for 100 plus, you know. But no, Goldbridge is right. No way he's worth 80 million as of today's market. No way.
Than George Best, who never played in a World Cup. I think Alvarez is a decent player, and I think he needs to play first-team football, and maybe Atletico Madrid think they're getting Aguero, because they had Aguero before he went to Man City, and I think he will do well in that league. But I think Man City have done amazingly good business there yet again. And, you know, we've got Premier League predictions coming up next week. Look, I have to take a moment and think, well, what's your angle here? Is it jealousy? A little bit. Is it bitterness? A little bit. Is it an inflated price involving Man City again? Yeah, definitely. Is it corrupt? No, probably not. I mean, certainly, I don't think it is corrupt. I just think it's the state of play at the moment where Manchester City, you know, everybody's kissing their arse. This is a club that could be relegated in 12 months, and yet Atletico Madrid are giving them £80 million for their reserve striker. Doesn't look like a club that's going to get relegated in 12 months, does it? Because if you thought you were getting relegated in 12 months, you might be selling people off a little bit cheaper than their value to get some money in. But no, it's business. In fact, it's not even business as normal. It's another level of business. And I think my issue with it is I just look at the Premier League, and the Premier League predictions are going to be very interesting, maybe around second, third, fourth. But it's not going to be very interesting around first place. If you don't go for Man City to win this league, you're a bloody idiot. Best squad, best manager, best circumstances, most money. They can't fail. It's an absolute open goal. And the scary thing is they've probably been a bit reserved this summer transfer window so far. They've certainly got the revenue and the money to go and spend.
Yeah, but they're not doing anything of that because they are trying to work their way around what all of us are watching, the 115 charges.
£200 million easily. And that's without selling players. And then they're selling a player for 80 million. So I think that the scary thing for the Premier League is they can sit back and go, wow, you know, they're complying with the rules. I'm sure they are complying with the rules. But no, everyone else is struggling to comply with your rules, and Man City aren't. And this is going to be 7 Premier League titles in 8. We've already had 6 in 7. It's a joke, and it's, you know, it's not fair. It might be fair, but it's not fair because we want a competitive league. And yeah, I just think, you know, yet again, it's just an evidence piece before, you know, right before the start of the season. If you didn't need reminding, because no one talks about them. I mean, no, you know, people are talking more about Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, of course. No one talks about Man City, maybe because they're bored of it, maybe because it's just so obvious, maybe because they're not that interesting.
Maybe it's because it's so obvious. And that's the truth. It's obvious. It's obvious to anybody who loves football. It's obvious to anybody who's watched football for more than 5 seasons. It is. Manchester City, state-owned, has been a disaster. It has been a disaster for the Premier League. And it's going to get worse because there's Newcastle in there as well, but it'll probably take a while before we see Newcastle. I suspect that the politics and optics of a lot of things that went on regarding that Newcastle business is why Newcastle have been very quiet. You know, it's a case of they're just trying to burrow their head into the sand at, you know, this particular point in time. Because no way City owners have more money than Saudi Arabia. No way. But Newcastle is just trying to, you know, stay out of the spotlight. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe my channel is actually not here to call out the pundits. Maybe my channel is here to talk about the death of football. It's not dead yet, but it's on life support. The real football, as it was designed to be, that football is on life support. What we have now is football matches that have flamethrowers and cheerleaders. Football matches that have flamethrowers and cheerleaders and artists performing songs before the match. That's not football. That's not football. But, you know, I know where Mark is coming from. And now I'm regretting putting this clip because it's just a very gloomy clip. And I'm not having any fun watching it.
But they're absolutely going to win the league because they're absolutely got the best players. I mean, Rodri's amazing, Foden's amazing, Haaland's amazing, De Bruyne is amazing. You know, there's so many amazing players that they've got. And then, I mean, is Pep Guardiola almost at a point now where he's not going out buying loads of players because he already knows he's got everything he needs anyway? It's just little bits here and there. But if you're selling your reserve striker for £80 million, then there's something very, very dominant about the way that you do things. And that's what I'm saying about it. It's just, it's incredible that they can do that. You can argue about whether he's worth it or not, but you can't argue with me when I say that Man City are miles ahead of everybody else in a league that we want to be competitive. We've got one team that is miles and miles ahead of everyone else. And if you haven't figured that out, what other club in the Premier League can sell their reserve striker for 80 million? There's not many who can sell their first team striker for 80 million. In fact, Villa with Watkins, Newcastle with Isak. I mean, even Liverpool can't sell Nunez for 80 million. We can't sell Rasmus or Xerxia for 80 million at the moment. Spurs won't get 80 million for Richarlison. Chelsea won't get 80 million for Jackson. Brentford can't get 80 million for Tony. So Man City are selling their reserve striker for 80 million, and there's probably only 2 clubs in the league that can sell their starting striker for that. And you're telling me that this ain't a dominated, juggernaut, predictable league? Talking of which, let's have a look. I mean, look, I did a video yesterday. People think that sometimes I do videos and I moan. Maybe I do, but it's very interesting because sometimes we hit, and this is what I love about That's Football and these sort of topical daily videos, is we sometimes go and talk about the 3 p.m. blackout, or we'll talk about the transfer window, or we'll talk about Liverpool's setup. Yesterday, I spoke about Conor Gallagher going to Chelsea and what a disgrace it was, because that's a player who should be a career Chelsea player, never leaving. And it's really sad that clubs have got to sell these young players. Well, lo and behold, I don't know whether he saw it, but the Chelsea manager's come out and basically agreed. He said, this is not Chelsea's problem when it comes to selling academy players. These are the rules. All the clubs at the moment are compelled to sell players from the academy because of the rules. It's all of the Premier League clubs' problems. And he's right. The benefit of selling a homegrown academy player compared to a flop that you bought from Shakhtar Donetsk or wherever is massive. You sell Conor Gallagher for 33 million, you get 33 million straight into FFP to go and spend on players. You sell Mudryk for 50 million when you bought him for 80 million a year and a half ago. You can't spend any of that 50 million because it's locked up in amortization. And that's basically it. You sell a homegrown player, pure profit on your books, which allows you to buy other players. You sell a flop for less than their value that you paid for them, it doesn't go in. So when you look at Chelsea, it's far more appealing to sell Conor Gallagher, one of your best players last season, who is a youth academy player that the fans want to see. It's far more compelling to sell Conor Gallagher than it is to sell Nicholas Jackson, Mudryk, Madueke, Raheem Sterling, Cucurella. All those players would be below selling Conor Gallagher. The system.
Now, I think I talked about this. I talked about this sometime last week, and it is a problem, and it's been created by the Premier League themselves. And they are the only ones that can, that can fix this, because it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. The Premier League has to find a way. They have to. The onus is on them. It's their league. They're the ones who run it. So they've got to find a way to make it profitable for the clubs to hold on to their academy products. This isn't about FFP. They are the ones that are going to come up with how they tweak FFP, but they've got to take that target off the backs of academy players, because that's what it is. The rules as they exist today mean that there is a target on the back of every single homegrown player. That target being whatever we sell you for is immediately going to be profit. So that target has to be taken off their back, and it has to be replaced with something that makes it profitable. That's the only word that there is. The Premier League has to come up with a rule that makes it profitable for clubs to hold on to their academy players. Because the rules as they exist now is precisely what has brought up this issue that Goldbridge is referring to. All clubs trying to meet up with FFP, trying to avoid these sanctions, especially now that these sanctions can hit in the form of points on the league table. You have to find a way to take that target off the backs of the academy products. If not, it will not even be about what the club or the manager wants. It will just be what they have to do.
The system's broke. That's what I was saying yesterday. The system is broke and everybody is doing it, and it's the Premier League rules. He also said it's not only us, it's all the Premier League clubs. It's a shame because in Italy, we've got Totti, who was with Roma for 20 years with the same club. One club man. We love that in football. The fans want to see that. But with the rules now, it's different than in the past. Well done. I don't think he's going to do particularly well as Chelsea manager, but I tell you what, he ain't stupid. He's absolutely correct. He's nailed it there, and we spoke about that yesterday. Absolutely nailed it there.
He is smart. And him not going to do well as Chelsea manager, which I also think is what's going to happen, it's not going to be so much because he's not a good coach. It's simply that he's gone to a club that doesn't have good owners. Not good in the sense of good or bad. Like when I say the Chelsea owners are not good, I'm just saying that these people who have bought Chelsea, they are not good for Chelsea. And that's just what we're going to see play out throughout their tenure.